All right. Hey, welcome to the Talking
Hey,
Grid.
everybody.
Hi,
it wouldn't be a...
Sorry?
It wouldn't be the beginning of one of our webinars, Sahana, if I didn't have an extra tab open that created feedback. It's a special way that I like to start the show.
Got it. It's a feature.
A little bad. So.
Yeah. Is it done now, Jerry? Have you closed the extra tab? Okay. All right. Hey, Pablo. Hey, Brendan. Can I just say how excited I am to see, somebody other than Jerry for the first time in the longest time.
It's true. Good to see you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for setting this up.
Thanks for having us.
We're all
I know. We were supposed to meet in person, and in South by Southwest. That hasn't happened, but we will make it happen sometime this year later when it's safe. But I'm just so happy that you guys were able to take the time to join us today. Just a quick context for all of our listeners and live attendees right now. We recently partnered with the wonderful folks here at makepath, Brendan and Pablo, the co-founders of makepath. And today we just want to learn about what you guys do, why you started makepath, and just kind of, discuss the wonderful work that you've done. And it's so nice that we were able to partner together as well. So that's what today's talk is going to be. Please feel free to ask us questions. As and when you think of them, and we can see them right here, and we'll answer them as and when we see it. But before we get started, it's really nice to see that both of you are doing well. You're safe and well at a time like this. So I think that's most important. So are you guys doing okay, dealing okay with all the unprecedented, unfamiliar things happening with COVID?
Well, I personally feel just, thankful that I'm fine, my family is fine, and I'm thankful to have a yard where I can go outside and I can get a little sun. And being in Central Texas, we have really nice weather here, and so that's great. I hope I have a lot of friends in the New York City area and other places that have been more affected by COVID, and so we're thinking a lot about them and calling them and talking to those folks. But certainly a unique time and a lot of challenges. Pablo, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Actually, I only live about less than a mile away from Brendan, so we still do socially distanced weekly founder walks, and I don't know. I would say I'm probably balancing. I'm very fortunate in the sense that I've been working remotely for 5 years, so this is actually not a change for me in that sense. So I'm very fortunate in that sense. We do have ways in which we are reorienting our business to grow and do well at this time. I'm also a musician. I'm part of a community that is not doing so well with this. So lots of friends and lots of folks that I know that work in the service industry that depend on live music for their income. And that's much more difficult. So I don't know, trying to stay connected with people and try to take care of ourselves and take care of each other when we need it. But it's a weird time. There's no way about it. I mean, no way around it.
Yeah, we feel the same. Much like what you said, we've been working remote for such a long time that I think for us, work-wise, things have continued and they feel pretty much the same. In fact, we feel like at times it's gotten a little bit busier, but definitely the impact of it, we find it in our daily lives. We have a full house of people, everyone working from home and fewer trips outside, especially for us here in Michigan. Things are pretty bad in terms of numbers. So we're definitely being extra careful. All right. So let's get started with the makepath discussion. I'm actually excited to know, until recently, you guys were called Parietal, right?
Yes,
that's right.
So how did you guys get together and decide to start this? What brought you guys together for this?
So I'd like to hear about the name thing too. I'm always interested in names. We've had some naming changes over time, so keep that in the back pocket. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, Parietal started in 2015. Pablo and I met in probably 2017, shortly after that. And we were interacting in social circles in the Austin area and realized fairly quickly that we actually, in our professional lives, had a lot in common. I can, I'll let Pablo talk a little bit about Proven and the company that he was running before. I was running Parietal, which was a kind of pure services consulting shop around data science, and specifically geographic data science, spatial data science. So it's going great. Like, we had a lot of great clients, but in interacting with Pablo, realized that there was just such great complementary skills that we had, that we were literally sitting there, and it just was so obvious to link up, because I was more or less saying, I was like, if I could only just get, find more great clients and find more people, I could certainly do the work. And Pablo says, well, I feel like I can find us good people. I don't know about doing the work. And we just got this is great. Pablo, maybe you can mention a little bit about Proven.
Yeah, I have. So as Brendan said, I don't have an engineering background. But I do have a heavy product background. I started a product company about 10 years ago. That was a company called Proven that was acquired, and I worked at the acquirer for about a year. In connecting with Brendan about professional things, we're like, okay, how do we combine our skills? And it does dovetail really well into, like, me personally, like, since my dad was a professor when I was a kid, and we would go up to, I've been looking at topographic maps since I was 5, and we would go up and hike in the mountains and look at, like, vegetation and, like, the type species and things like that. My dad was a biodiversity expert, and I've done some mountaineering, so I've climbed a few hills in California, Colorado, 14,000 foot peaks and things like that. So from a kind of like fit perspective, it worked really well, and it's really exciting to bring that product angle. And then also I've quite a bit of experience with marketing and sales to work with Brendan to amplify the success that he was having even further. So
you need to have that peanut butter and jelly kind of approach, or whatever your favorite food compliments are.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't work if you're doing great data in the vacuum and you can't make the sales and do the partnerships and drum up the marketing and all that stuff.
One heuristic that I was using was, when I was running Parietal on my own, I could see things that I knew I needed to do and I wasn't doing. And those are things that I knew I needed to do.
It's okay, because if you ignore things, they eventually just work out by themselves, right? No, maybe not. No, it's probably not good advice.
So it's challenging, but it's also really fun. And I think both of us thrive in this sort of an environment where we have a little more control, we take a little more risk, but then we're able to not be pigeonholed into one little thing, and we can draw from a lot of our experiences in different places.
Jump in. Tell people about your expertise and the kind of data science you do, and then maybe, like, when you talk through it, I'm really curious to get back to, like, we're both in the data industry, both data science fields, and how, even though we're not on the front line doing things, helping people in person during this weird time period, just how some of the superpowers that you guys have you think can be helpful in this moment. I know those are two kind of thoughts, but I'm hoping to get.
No, that's good. We've definitely made an effort to try to help with the COVID crisis. I mean, Brendan, do you want to talk about the projects we're undertaking?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of different levels on which you can contribute to helping the situation and better understanding what's going on right now. Our comparative advantage is in the tooling side. So we love building tools that academics, other data scientists, and then also engineers and folks in completely different disciplines use to better understand the world. Right now, Xarray-Spatial is the name of our raster processing library. It's an open source library, all written in Python. It focuses on a lot of the common raster analysis tools that you'd want to use, things like focal statistics, zonal statistics, view shed, proximity analysis, surface analysis like slope and curvature, and what you'd want to do analysis on terrain or elevation is all in there. But we're in the data science industry, right? We're taking data and we're trying to turn it into information. That's what we're doing. And the amount of information that you get out of data varies on what you do with it. We all know this. So when we've been focusing a lot, and GIS in general focuses a lot on heat maps. You see a lot of heat maps. We're seeing a lot of heat maps of infections and in a lot of different areas. We decided that we wanted to implement hotspots, the GEDIS or G-star clustering statistics specifically, into our open source tools as a foundational tool for researchers to use in epidemiology. So trying to find areas of cold and hot spots, but that are statistically significant, that aren't just heat maps. So we can get a sense of the structure of data with heat maps. But so the hotspot tool, which just got added to Xarray-Spatial last week, it's still in alpha. We're still testing it. We're hoping for a release this coming week. We also added some enhanced documentation. This is only our second release of Xarray-Spatial, so it's fairly new. But we do have a decent breadth of tools.
Wow.
This also ties into some of the other statistical work that we're doing, which there was a really interesting GitHub repository, New York Times article and study out of Harvard called PM COVID, which was looking at particulate matter. What we're doing is we partnered with the Environmental Science and Forestry School attached to Syracuse University. And they're modeling experts. We're technical engineering scaling experts. We can scale what they do, but they have an understanding of the modeling side that is unique. I mean, they're cutting edge modelers in Bayesian statistics and in different areas. So what we're working with them to take data from the SafeGraph COVID consortium, which was looking at points of interest, looking at the businesses that are operating and are not operating, social distancing scores by block group that we've then aggregated to county. And we're taking that information and we're using the Harvard model, which is a negative binomial model. And we're taking the SafeGraph data and then we're plugging in new variables. So what we've done is that we've said, hey, we have friends in the private space at SafeGraph. We have friends in the public academic space that understand modeling. Let's put these two folks together and see if we can do something interesting.
And that's part of a bigger trend too. So that's something that I've thought a lot about since starting to work with Brendan is how do we connect a lot more of these nodes together. So, I mean, SafeGraph, we started working with SafeGraph because the founder of SafeGraph, Warren Hoffman, is actually an investor in my prior company. Right? So that's where I connected with them. And then I started talking to Jonathan Wolf there and we ended up working with the SafeGraph data consortium and then pulling in folks that we knew on the academic side. So a lot of this is how do we use these tools and reorganize these ideas and these tools to connect ideas and connect people. I mean, we've done that with you guys in some ways, and connecting you with folks who are interested in the work that you're doing, and that's really deeply embedded into our ethos. Is this idea of not only creating and these tools and these ideas, but also connecting them in creative ways with other people who are interested in similar things.
And what are some of your guys' favorite projects that you've worked on? Because I want to be conscious too, if people have ideas for how they might work with you to take their understanding of things further, what are some favorite projects you guys have worked on in general? It doesn't have to be COVID related, just something interesting. And then how does somebody approach you if they have does it start with a question about the world? Does it start with having some data already? What's the on-ramp to work with makepath and kind of figure out if you guys can be helpful?
I think that the idea of the pedagogy, right, is that you can look at a mountain and it's one thing to watch an expert climber climb a mountain, but the pedagogy in teaching is about how you walk up the course for someone that's not familiar with the space. And that's what we help folks do in understanding, what exactly is your problem? And let's work backwards from your problem and find the technologies that are appropriate to help. You don't have to be
Alex Honnold free soloing El Capitan. You can show up in some flip-flops and some jorts, and you can pop a beer and make it to the top with makepath.
Great climber, but
so hence, is that where the name comes from? Then is it makepath? Is it finding your way to the
actually, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Am I stretching for poetry? I'll take it either way. Sounds good.
Jerry wants to know why the name happened. So let's make.
Well, we can talk about it. Let's finish. I'm happy to address that. We literally had like 120 names on the list.
I know, that's why I'm always curious.
Well, that process though with the failure rate of technology projects, if we look at like the triple constraint in project management of scope, budget, and timeline, folks say that around 90% of projects fail to meet one of those constraints.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what we're doing is trying to mitigate risk for clients that may have some doubt on an area. And we specialize in Python and geospatial, but we also have a breadth in technical topics that extend outside of traditional data science into more engineering domains. So one project, for instance, that I just found fascinating was I got exposed to a project where we were using Python to process 1 terabyte of data in an hour coming from a stream. I had not seen Python perform at that level before. And so that's processing a couple of gigs a second, right, of data that's coming through a fiber optic cable. This stream is not ending. And you can imagine the folks that are using this software are actually in a little container swapping hard drives because there's so much data coming out that every 12 hours you need a new hard drive to store.
Wow.
So that, to me, showed that Python wasn't a slow language, or there was conditions in which you could make it fast. And the balancing productivity and performance in software languages is one of the things that we're, I think, reconciling right now with a lot of the dynamic languages that came up in the mid-90s and the end of the 90s. We think of Perl and PHP and Python and Ruby, JavaScript, these great dynamic languages where you can write willy-nilly objects with no types, and reconciling the performance implications of dynamic languages is, I think, one of the very important kind of frontiers that we're at on the software side. We've seen some languages like Golang from the Google group, Rust, Elixir. These are new languages that are trying to deal with the productivity performance balancing. And what we play in a lot in the open source world is saying, can we have a different relationship with the C language? That is one of my fundamental questions with Python. And if you look at the Python ecosystem in GeoTools, you're going to see that there's a tendency to go one of two directions in interfacing with C. You can either wrap C code as a C extension, and we'll see that in libraries like the R3 spatial indexing library, which wraps libspatial index, which is a C library. We see that in GeoPandas, wrapping up, wrapping Shapely, wrapping Geos, wrapping PDAL. That is what it is to wrap up C or C++ code so that you can offer the productivity benefits of the syntax of Python with the performance benefits of an actually compiled language. We have a different approach now to this. That breaks the developers and engineers up into a Python group and into a C and C++ group. Instead, we're going down a path using a technology called Numba, which was developed out of Continuum Analytics and out of Anaconda. And big thanks to them kind of in their support for Xarray-Spatial and the work that we've done in Datashader. That project will take Python code and it will compile it to LLVM bytecode and to give you C-level performance without switching languages. So without the context switching that requires with changing from Python to C. Great. Well, what's the problem with that? We have a big history of amazing GeoTools written in C and C++. We're not going to replace GDAL or Geos anytime soon. Like GDAL's a 20-year project, amazing contributors. The most recent version of GDAL is great. It has new amazing features like the cloud optimized geotiffs, right? That's a new thing. The rewriting all the projection libraries. GDAL is doing amazing. We're taking, with Xarray-Spatial, we're presenting raster analysis tools that do not have a GDAL dependency. And that is what is different about our library versus other libraries. That is how we interface with C. So we're presenting fast code that's performant, C order of magnitude performance, but all written in Python. So if you want to go into the slope function and you really want to look at what's going on in slope, you can stay in Python. You can read all that code without having to context switch over to a huge C library. That is what Xarray-Spatial is, and that's its value proposition, is a simpler dependency chain in setting it up. We have another project that I'd just like to mention that fell out of the Datashader project, is also involved with John Meese, who's now the chief architect at Plotly, is Spatial Pandas. Spatial Pandas is akin to GeoPandas, but again, there's no GDAL or GEOS dependency in Spatial Pandas. And because of that, its scope is limited. It's not going to have the breadth of functions that you would expect, as you look at the GEOS library, the C library there. But it's all Numba based, so you can easily extend it. And it has this fundamentally different way of interacting with the C level. So that's Spatial Pandas and Xarray-Spatial are somewhat akin to GEOS and GDAL in their treating of vector data and raster data.
Okay. And the thing about these, these are all open source tools that anybody can, all the repositories are available on GitHub, right? So the thing about, as you well know, in GIS, a lot of implementations, everything is so custom, right? So it's very difficult to take something off the shelf and make it work for everything. So a lot of the work that we do is with taking a lot of these tools and helping people implement them in the context that is important to them, right? So it's a large, fast jet plane only flies insofar as it has, the right controls, the right pilot, the right information from the flight control tower, and that's what we do is help use these tools in a very effective way. We're working with organizations like Bat Conservation International. We're helping them with organizing a lot of their internal projects. And right now, actually, I have here our new Echo Meter Touch. This is a bat walk device that you plug into your phone, and it actually vibrates when you see a bat. So we're actually working with them on some data projects that have to do with how do you organize the information from bat walks into in a way that makes sense, right? So utilizing all these tools are all awesome, and they're most useful in the context of answering an important question for one of our partners.
Now, can I ask you guys, so my brain, I'm always trying to balance the technical and then the philosophical, which I guess kind of gets into the political, just in how people decide, how people make decisions and move around and allocate resources in the world. And when I hear you talk, I can kind of summarize some of this as it's becoming easier and faster to work with bigger data sets in real time, and people have access to a wealth of information and predictive analytics and all sorts of stuff that they never really had before. This is kind of a clunky analogy, but I think about this sometimes in our field writ large. Marshall McLuhan in the 60s, he talked about the medium is the message. And his observation was that every time there's a new medium, the first thing that people would do with it was whatever the last medium did. So a simple example is when the motion picture camera gets invented, people decide to film plays, right? They're like, oh, I get it. Now we can record plays and people can watch plays later on. Right. And it takes a little while to figure out oh no, there's a whole new language through the camera. We can move the camera, we can do documentary, we can do all these different things that were not possible previously. And so then a whole new language comes out of it. And I kind of feel at least in our experience of data, a lot of times customers are just oh, how do I do a thing that I used to do before that was hard, just a little faster, a little more efficient, a little bit better? And they're kind of missing that there's such an abundance of inputs that and the ability to do machine learning and predictive analytics and all these kinds of things that can allow for new opportunities for behaviors and decision making that I can't really process right now either. I just know it's different. I'll shut up, but I'll use one more example. We were talking to an aerial imagery provider recently, and they were rightfully bragging about how high resolution their imagery was. And I was looking at an example, and the person zoomed into a backyard, and I could literally see the plastic fork on a styrofoam plate next to some beans or whatever. and the person was casually talking to me about how this would help an assessor put a better value on the house, right? Like that was like the business example. And I'm like, that's true, but you're also looking in such detail at anything you want to on planet Earth. Clearly this has different applications than for the assessor or the appraiser.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, as you guys both provide a lot of enhanced capabilities to your customers, you're making really big decisions, with this data, or they can be. Like, how do you think about helping them through how to take advantage of it, how to be careful when it's not a silver bullet, but people might feel like it is sometimes, especially in a time where we have governors making decisions about when people can leave their houses or not based on the data that they're looking at. So,
well, I mean, data still has to be used by people. So I think that's kind of deep, going 2 layers deep on what you're just saying. Like, yes, we're constantly asked. So, I mean, there's so many aspects to what you just said, right? So what one of them is, how do people think about tools and new ways to use tools as they become available? And we certainly spend a lot of time thinking with our partners and our clients about how to take new angles and new approaches to things. Then there's the political aspect, like you said, about like, well, once the data is available, and like even if you agreed ahead of time as to how you're going to use it, how people actually, like, what is the human side of implementing all these things, right? And they're related, they're cousins, but they're also different, right? I don't know. Brendan, what's your take on that?
It's a hard thing, and people are gray in their ethics and how at every level. And there needs to be regulation on what data sets are allowed to enter certain models. For instance, in credit cards, you can't add race or ethnicity data into whether someone gets a credit card or not. And there's a really good reason for that. You would destroy society, like with adding with the short term.
But there are people doing that. I mean, major companies, like the big Fs and the Gs have all this data, and they only tell us about a tiny bit of what they collect, right? There's like all these like hidden settings of things that they collect. So, I mean, well, there's an entire new other side of this, which is like the ethics side. That's something we think about a lot. Like, when we get asked to do things, we're like, is that an ethical thing?
Yeah, that could set you apart at some point too, I think, because it seems like there will be some shakeout. I don't think for either of us, because we are being ethical about things, but when you're at the cutting edge of the data field, and you see like what some people have and how they're using it, and then you think about the gap of like how many people understand what they have and what they're using, then it's like, this is going to shake out somehow. We'll see. We'll see how it shakes out.
I mean, character is destiny. I mean, in my experience, people end up, it takes sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, but you can only be responsible for your decisions, and then people end up falling in their own pitfalls. Like we were just focused on what we want to be focused on, and like on doing the right thing for our clients. But yeah, there's definitely these tools are so powerful that there are huge implications of. I mean, if you can see the fork in somebody's plate, like imagine what else you can see.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, down the chimney. No, and all I mean by that is like we're all at the cutting edge of this field. It's powerful. I mean, what you guys are doing is incredibly powerful. And that's why it's desirable for people to want to work with you to figure out like what insights can I get that I couldn't get any other way.
Right.
And apart from the business and the fun of doing a good job and helping people, there's an incredible responsibility, and it's interesting just to have your full mind.
It's like the force, I mean, Brendan, do you want to talk about the methane project? Because that's a great one where we're using this tool for good, right? Like
like the Sentinel-5, the European Sentinel-5 satellites, which have a lot of like Earth observation tools on them that can measure methane and can measure different releases. We were recently looking at a lot of that data for the Permian Basin in Texas. It extends, into neighboring states also. It's hard a lot of times. Like people want clean answers, and they and I think the deeper you go on the data and science side, the more you hedge any of your responses with confidence intervals and margins of errors and stuff. But the methane is a particularly bad greenhouse gas. In Texas, it's it's pretty. The number of wells in West Texas are, would shock just about anyone as you see that the entire state is checkerboard with wells. The oil and gas industry right now, I think there's a big role for self-regulation in using these tools to look at offenders that are releasing methane or not fixing leaks in some of their areas. I think there's a big incentive for folks to do that. And there's a couple of companies that are trying to help oil and gas self-regulate. And I think in a lot of the different, talking to the Syracuse group about this also, it's pollution and environmental destruction is very asymmetrical in terms of the offenders. There tend to be some few very, very bad offenders. And then the most folks are pretty good. If you look at, for instance, industrial pollutants, there tend to be a couple of factories that are really, really, really bad. And so having the data to quantify that and not taking that vague statement and saying, no, it's these 18 factories right here. They're outliers based on these stats. And so EPA, go regulate these guys. That's the same thing this is the power of GIS and spatial data science, is that you're able to quantify vague things. Hey, we have forest fragmentation that's hurting biodiversity in our country. That's vague. How about these are 18 forest fragments?
Yep.
You can identify them. This is their area. If this new road goes through here, then we could actually combine these areas together and have a better outcome.
That's just one example of something, a way that I just wanted to point out one example of some ways in which we're using this data that are really powerful to help. We all have a responsibility at the end of the day, right? So to make things better. So I think the oil industry, there are a lot of good actors and a lot of people who do care. And oil is maligned in many ways. At the same time, it is basically what powers the engine of the world today. And we also do work with folks in other areas trying to, grow renewables and things like that. But I think it is important that, given that it is what powers the engine of the world now, how do we use it as responsibly as we can as a resource?
I think you guys are going to be very, very busy coming out of this period of time. I don't think it's even. We're both getting signals of it a little bit, that our expertises and data sets are, first it's they'll be really helpful, and then we're going to see more and more. Oh no, they're absolutely necessary to participate in navigating whatever comes next.
And we were talking about this right before we started rolling tape here. That how do you react to COVID? And one of the things, as soon as this became clear that we are in a global pandemic, it's reorient the business towards people that need this more in times of a global pandemic. So we're working with, we're doing some pro bono work with academic on the academic side for COVID. We're also working with people on the healthcare side, working with retailers that need logistics, help with logistics and moving assets, across space and time. And there are a lot of people, and I think this is not true for every business, but there are a lot of businesses where, sure, your current business is not doing as well. How do you reorient and adapt to figure out who does need your stuff now? Sure. And again, I don't want to generalize. I'm sure plenty of people can come up with exceptions. Well, my business is not like that. True, but I think there are ways in many cases to stretch your imagination and see what is, how do you adapt? What is this? Okay, sure, this is terrible, and then how do you make the best of that particular situation? The only thing you can control is the things that you do in the face of a difficulty. You can't control the external factors that put you in a difficult situation.
Sure. Yeah.
It is kind of nice for us with MakePath that we're all getting a lesson in what's important right now in our connections with people and our relationships and how important that is. And as we grow and meet more people, it is nice to have things like SafeGraph to step up and say, hey guys, we're going to provide resources for everyone to collaborate and get to know each other. I went to one of the virtual symposiums they had yesterday on researchers, was amazing. And that's a really great thing that people are remembering what's important and which is our relationships and all of our work, and we're working backwards. And what I really want to see, just like slightly more on the technical side, is I want an environment where our tools are open and inclusive, and we're able to develop tools that are transparent, that we can all read the logic to, and then we can take these tools and apply them to our specific problems. And as folks in physics or folks in epidemiology find overlap, we can all collaborate on those tools. And the DASK project, I'd like to talk about DASK, Coiled Computing, mentioned them with Matthew Rockland. We were at the DASK workshop in Washington, D.C. Right before all this, the madness of COVID started. And it's amazing how many people of different disciplines were there, from supply chain managers to geoscientists, intelligence community folks, everyone kind of coming together because we all have to deal with huge data sets. We want to run clusters of machines, and Dask is a great library to enable that.
We're also taking this opportunity to focus a lot more on data storage, right? So how do you take these tools and use them to tell stories? So we've started some things on our YouTube channel that are fairly early. We're working on some really cool, interesting pieces that will be coming out on our blog. And so how do we take these powerful tools and then make them human, make them real with the way that we tell these stories? And that's a lot, actually, going back to your question about the name, right? We'll tell you how we came up with our name, but I want to hear about your name, because I know that you guys were Loveland and then there's Landgrid. So I want to hear about how you...
No, there's more before that.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, well, you got to be careful what you ask for, my friends. No, the fastest rapid fire. So we got to Loveland because when we started property mapping, I had a friend who was a lawyer who gave me a book called The Law of Property. She's like, you got to read this if you're going to do real estate stuff. And it had been owned by a lawyer named Susan Loveland, who in college student style kind of wrote her last name in all caps on the side of the pages. So it's like, Loveland, that's a great name for this, Loveland. And Loveland.com was gone. So this is what, destroys everyone's dreams these days, right? Like everything is gone. So you get weird, drop the vowels and whatever else. And so I had like a list of like Loveland derivatives. Unlock Loveland, make Loveland. And I asked my mom which one she liked best. And she thought make Loveland was cool. It sounds like the 60s. It sounds fun. So,
yeah, I was going to say, did she go to Woodstock?
Yeah, we were a little more, which is funny because she's not very hippie. She's a cool person, but that's not really her style. So I was like, okay, so for a while we had make Loveland was like the Loveland Technologies domain. And then we had spin-off products. We had why don't we own this.com for a while. We had livinginthemap.us for a while, for God's sakes. There were all these like, weird things. And then we went back to make Loveland. And then just recently, like a year and a half ago, I was like, you know what? Like our company is so serious. Our data set is so good. People love us when they know us, but like too many people go make Loveland. Like, what's that about? For like the domain, like, is this serious? So we actually paid money for it, and it was a good thing to do. I think we paid like $5,000 for landgrid.com. And I was a little skeptical for a second, but I was like, I think it's been great because people are like, it's short, it's the .com. People are like, oh, you mapped the land grid, it makes sense. And so we're still Loveland Technologies, the company, but land grid is our service. So anyways, that was longer than I wanted to make it, but that took like years to get through all that stuff.
No, we went through about 120 names or so.
Oh, wow.
And we explored, and obviously you have like I had a spreadsheet with the grid of like, okay, here's a name, here's like the families of ideas, but then is the .com available? Is there another aspect of naming that people don't often think about that can come back much later to be a pain is trademark.
Sure.
So you have to do, there's something called TESS, TESS, and you do a trademark search. So it's like, is the trademark available? Is there an adjacent trademark? Is the website available, and so forth. So yeah, for us, makepath, we explored a lot of things that had to do with, creating your own path with light. So my mom used to tell me a story when I was a kid about a little boy that's lost in a forest, and then it's like it's dark and it's cold and it's like in the middle of the forest, and this fairy godmother shows up like, hey, little boy, you're lost. What's going on? And then the boy's like, yeah, I'm lost. It's dark. I don't know how to get out. So the fairy godmother gives the little boy a matchbook. It says, here, just light one match, and then you can see, 10 yards, and then lo and behold, the little boy gets out of the forest by, and burns himself, and then lights another match and keeps going. So it gets to the edge of the forest, gets out, and then the fairy godmother's like, see, I knew you could do it. And then the little boy's kind of upset. He's like, yeah, I know. I mean, thank you. Why, you're a fairy godmother. You couldn't give me anything. You could have just you could have illuminated the whole forest or given me a torch. I kept burning my fingers, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, little boys can be a little ungrateful sometimes. But the fairy godmother's like, well, yes, but if you had seen how big the forest was, you would have never gotten started. So because you could only see 10, you were able to make your path out of there, or make your road out of the forest by going 10 yards at a time. Right? So a lot of the concepts and ideas it come with first of all, the idea of exploring terrain and things like that, but also, so you can that philosophical idea of it can only, one match at a time. So when I went to college, my mom actually gave me a compass so I wouldn't lose my north, and a matchbook so I could remember to do that. So there's a lot of that, that ethos and that philosophy and embedded into how we got to the name Makepath. And we do have a big service component. So Brenda and I are both committed to volunteering, once a month and in different ways. We're also talking about sponsoring people who are making their own path and doing their own things, whether it be different athletes or artists, and that. We want to really embed that ethos into the DNA of our company. So
that's great, and it also explains why your logo is a child with a flaming hand. No, I'm just kidding. I was always curious about that one.
I do. I actually. Are you guys familiar with the Pi Ladies group? Do you know supporting women in Python?
I'm not familiar offhand.
No.
They are an amazing group, and they're very successful internationally. And I collect different T-shirts, and if you buy a T-shirt, you support the stuff that's going on, and you make a contribution. They send you a T-shirt. So I actually have on just this.
Great reveal.
Oh,
if you check out this,
we're doing the Superman.
This is one of the rarest Pi Ladies T-shirts around.
Oh wow!
Pi Ladies Sao Paulo, the Brazil Ladies group. Awesome.
I like it.
Big shout out to all the Brazil Python community who run an awesome program down there, and they have SciPy Brazil, and they also have PyCon Brazil, which are amazing conferences which go on there. So check those out.
Wow.
Good. Well,
Pi Ladies.
About talking with you guys too. There's obviously, this is a conversation that we'll all keep going, but there's such I just like networking with you guys. All the connections that we have, and I don't know. I mean, maybe it's one of those silver lining things that come out of periods of time like this too. But even though I find it ironic, this was the year I was going to go to a ton of conferences. That's where we almost met in person. I was like, damn it. We're going to South by. I'm going. You want to go for 3 days? No, I'm going for 8. Whatever.
Yep.
And all that stuff got canceled. But then somehow, the lack of being able to do that has somehow upped the amount of networking, connection making in strange ways, in counterintuitive ways. Since everybody's working together like this, all of a sudden there's these consortiums to join, and we're having these video chats. Everybody's becoming a podcaster. Everybody's inviting their.
I mean, that's what defines people is what do you do in times of adversity? Nobody does not face adversity. For whatever mysterious reasons of how existence as a human being is configured, everybody gets beat up in some way or another, sometimes collectively, sometimes individually. And what defines you as a human being is what do you do when things go wrong, right? So
it would be cool to live in a different kind of universe, but I agree. Yes, that's how things tend to evolve. It'd be fun to live in a downhill one.
A downhill universe? Yeah, I'm sure they exist. Well, have you guys seen the new Netflix series about
Which one?
It's a universe simulations one. I just saw 2 episodes last night. It's an unbelievably trippy philosophical.
Is it
What's that? No. God, I said
a friend who said watch the platform on Netflix. It's super trippy. So
no. This is an adult cartoon series. And it's starting. I'll pull up the name here because it's the most exceptional show I've seen in a long time. It's metaphysical Yeah, I mean, I'll pull it up here.
Friday night.
It just debuted on 420, so that'll give you a little bit of an idea of. But it's hold on. Yeah, you guys talk about what you're watching, and I'll tell you about this because this one is.
This is what people stay for: is the end of the webinar. Netflix digging through the crates. That's what we typically get to on here. I don't know, man. I gotta say, so yeah, we did talk about Tiger King a little bit last time, and how that somehow I thought it was interesting that they went from Netflix documentary to them already releasing reaction episodes from the cast. Being asked at the press conference if he was going to pardon Joe Exotic. I was like, that just spoke to the speed at which things happen now, how that escalates to reaction to White House to request for pardon. Not on Netflix. I just got to give a plug. I was a big fan of this season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I'm a Larry David fan. And season 10 was as good as ever. So, I'm not going to. That one's better to watch than to have me explain what happened because it'll be like, Jerry, are you a jerk? And they'll go, no, it's just Larry puts himself in situations. So, anyway.
So, Hannah, what have you been watching?
What have I been watching? I just finished The Outsider on HBO, which was it's based on a Stephen King novel, so lots of gory, scary stuff, which I usually like watching. So that was good. I finished Succession. It's one of my favorite shows. And I love Brian Cox, who's the patriarch and who plays the patriarch in the on the show. So yeah, that was pretty good. It
looks great. I haven't seen Succession.
Oh, you should watch it, Jerry. I'm sure you would love it. It has a little bit of everything, and I really like it. A lot of good actors, and I just also watched Tiger King out of pressure from the Paffendorf brothers. I
feel bad. Our colleague Nick and I were like, Sana, you gotta watch this, and then she watched it like a week after like the hype peaked, and so we went to talk about it. Nick and I were like, it was so bad.
They were not even interested in talking about it at that point.
I've resisted Tiger King so far, but we'll
I feel you. I resist things when they get too popular sometimes. I'm like, whatever, it looks stupid and everybody's kind of watched it. You'll probably dig it though. You'll put it on like, what is this? Well, you'll cross your arms and you'll be like, holy crap.
It's amazing.
It's one of those where you're grossed out, you don't like what you're watching, but you just can't stop. It's like
train wreck.
Yeah, train wreck, that's what it is.
Well, so I found the name of the one. It's called Midnight Gospel. The Midnight Gospel. It is unreal. I mean, I saw 2 episodes last night. It's just like absolutely mind blowing. It's one of those things that you have to watch 7 or 8 times. Some of the imagery is really intense. But it all has like deeper hidden meanings. It's like a nonstop, like they hit you with like nonstop imagery while they do a podcast style conversation about deep metaphysical. They talk about meditation. They talk about psychedelics. They talk about all kinds of like the perceptions of like what it means to be human and alive, and like as viewed through the lens of somebody who goes into different universes every day. I mean, it's very hard to explain. I've only seen 2 episodes. I think there are 8 of them. It just debuted this week.
It sounds kind of like Waking Life, if you remember that, by the Austin filmmaker. Is it Linklater?
Oh, Richard?
Yes, Waking Life and Scanner Darkly, those sorts of.
Yeah, it just sounds like Waking Life was like moving from one scenario liquidly to another inside of these. One philosopher.
So great. So great.
I haven't seen it. I'll check that out.
Good. Yeah, that's awesome.
I got to see. Richard Linklater's from Austin, and he does things around here. And the Austin Film Society had some events that I went to with Richard Linklater interviewing other people. Fascinating. So I went to one of Richard Linklater interviewing Ethan Hawke, which is great. There are a lot on all those, Before Midnight or After Midnight. Those movies, Judy Delpy and those.
Before Sunrise.
Before Sunrise.
Yeah, that was 1994.
Yeah, those are great. Also, Richard Linklater interviewing Matthew McConaughey, and just great stuff. Because they work together on like Dazed and Confused. As they're talking about Dazed and Confused and all that.
Yeah, my wife and I watched Dazed and Confused not long ago, maybe like 3 months ago. That's like, I would hold that up as kind of like a perfect film. You know what I mean? It's just hard to argue with it. It's just like, it like hits that nostalgia for a time period I didn't even live in.
Yeah. Have you seen the one that he did with the college baseball team? It's based by the same, inspired by the same ethic.
That was called like Get Some, I think, or something. I never saw that one.
Yeah, it's inspired by the same ethic of Dazed and Confused. It's much newer. It only came out. Everybody Wants Some. Is this an R-rated, PG-rated? I don't know. It's Webcast, but it kind of takes that same, like a lot of the same colors and a lot of the same, like similar dialogue, and puts it into a different movie.
And sorry, we got to name one more movie here because we can't stop talking until we mention Slacker. Have you guys?
We're talking Linklater. You gotta, that was a classic.
It's a great ode to Austin, and so
I haven't seen that one. I'll write that down too.
Slacker.
Yeah, Slacker was from a simpler VHS time, and it was it followed a lot of, it was kind of like you would
VHS. Jesus, you're old, Jerry.
Like it was like we had you remember when you used to have not like that. I'm 38, so like I'm not quite the spring chicken I was, but like when you would own like 10 VHS tapes and there was no internet and you just like watch like Dennis the Menace like 50 times or The Sandlot. So like anyway.
Be Kind Rewind,
Be Kind Rewind, man. Rent it, yeah. You get 2 VCRs and you try to copy it, and only some of the tapes would copy. The other ones had like blocking technology built in. Anyway. Or
you record your favorite show and you only have 1 VHS tape, so you put it on the EP mode, so it records 6 hours, but the quality is like awful.
Kids just won't understand. They won't understand it. But so we'll follow up. We'll do the land makepath like total like media review hour. Like I didn't even talk about Uncut Gems, which I watched the other night, and I appreciated that.
I've heard really good things about it.
It's very anxiety ridden and it's very grim, but it's also, I find, always cool to see Adam Sandler in a serious kind of acting role. Not the Billy Madison stuff, but like like Punch Drunk Love or Uncut Gems. But so anyway, gang, I don't know. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you? When we post all the nice, make it all.
They can find us at makepath.com. You can reach out at contact@makepath.com. And we are Makepath GIS on Twitter. And we have a YouTube channel.
All right, your YouTube. And those matches that you send to people too now that we know the name, they can have like the fairy godmother, you just sign the path and like burn your fingers, send the hashtag.
Also on GitHub, we're Xarray-Spatial, the project on GitHub, one of our open source projects to check out. And then also just github.com/makepath for our organization.
Cool.
Perfect.
We'll write all these links out. These things are just useful for people check in. They want to put a face to a company, to a product, and we appreciate you guys hanging out and just rapping about what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. You guys are a great partner. We always sing your praises, so thank you for helping us spread our message.
Likewise.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll talk to you soon. See ya.
All right. Take care. Talk to you guys soon.